So, most likely every single action you've done on the internet has been harvested for data. Every click, every time you pause to click off a video, every hesitation to add that item to your cart. Chances are everything you've done in the last 10 years has been recorded and sold in some form or the other. On the topic of money, companies which have these large datasets, which are almost always user generated, can generate ridiculous revenues from licensing these datasets to the companies which desperately need this data. You're a smart person. I'll give you a second to think about who's getting shafted in this scenario. Good job. It is the users. And to the mass adoption of social media in our daily lives, you're most likely a part of that user base. You're on YouTube right now, most likely logged into an account from your usual location. Subscribe to an ever-increasing list of YouTubers. Subscribe to an ever-increasing list of YouTubers, which can be neatly organized into specific niches. If you want to increase that list by subscribing to me, I'd appreciate it. But shameless plug aside, all the specific points I mentioned before are all data points. Your location allows Google to sell ads to specific advertisers in your area. Or, alternatively, from checking your most watched channels and most subscribed. They can hone into specific niches and recommend products from those niches by advertisers who will pay a hefty chunk of change to Google for the mere chance their eyeballs glaze over their products. Even the promoted search results you find when you Google a specific product are always advertised websites or products, directly attacking your lizard brain, which has adapted to automatically look at the first few options, because we are accustomed to those being the most popular or most viewed sites, which most people correlate to quality even if erroneously. Nonetheless, these companies also have to fight to keep your eyeballs on their version of MySpace, because the longer you stay, the more data they harvest, whilst also serving you more and more ads, which is really a sweet deal. You sign up for free, offering nothing upfront, whilst they burden themselves with the server costs, the staff, and the massive volume of data, which can accurately predict a consumer's actions better than the consumer himself can. Now, it has to be said honestly that this can only function with rather large and successful companies, where the company itself has all the negotiating power in respect to both the advertisers and end users, with the advertiser retaining some of this power due to the economic relationship present. You're not just the product anymore, you are the business model. So, while I've just spent the last 2 minutes roughly talking about how big companies and social media sites sell your data, they harvest and pretty much utilize it to make themselves some money, how could you maybe parlay your own data into some of your own big bucks, possibly? So, here's where the fun legal stuff that I like, at least, that's not going to be fun for you guys, starts. We run into the small problem where, for this whole scenario to allow you to enjoy the fruits of your doom scrolling, you need to own the data that you've generated. You actually have to, legally own it. Now, can anyone show me a specific piece of legislation anywhere where it's written plainly that all data generated by users on third-party platforms belongs to that end user? You won't find such legislation anywhere, even in the proposed Data Act of the EU. Nothing of this nature is explicitly mentioned. All it does is this opens the closed-off system and creates a two-way street where the user can see products and related surface data. This did create new rights and obligations for both the data collector and the generator, but this allowed the user to access his data, be aware of any methods of collecting his data, and how they can retrieve and or erase this data, whilst tiptoeing around the issue of data ownership by allowing all parties involved to access the data and possibly remove it. Now, the EU is a behemoth of an organization having to wrangle multiple different legal systems, political atmospheres, and technological literacy. So it could be assumed that the reason for this issue being untouched is out of pragmatism rather than one of lobbying, though I have no concrete proof of the former. This doesn't solve our core issue before we even get to the point of selling the data we've generated. Looking at the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, which in reality just regulates how personal information is processed. It further lays on the rights of the user, such as the right to be forgotten and the right to object. So with these rights, one can implicitly say that they do own the data due to the ability to remove this data or to object to its use. Which isn't exactly the most strong implication, but let's roll with it. The California Consumer Privacy Act, or the CCPA, protects personal information, much like the GDPR does, but only for those doing business in the state of California, and only when they hit certain criteria, after which they must comply with the CCPA. American former presidential candidate Senator John Kennedy had introduced a law in Congress, the Own Your Own Data Act, in 2019. As far as I could find online, nothing else has been presented thus far. So in my humble Europor perspective, I have certain rights over my data, and if I do want to sell my own data, I should not get into trouble considering that it's a consensual sale. Big companies get to sell your data and collect the big bucks, so why shouldn't you? So let's actually look into if people want to sell their data first, because we're gonna actually have to read some research papers now, and by reading them, I'm gonna read them and you're gonna listen to me summarize them because God knows you're gonna read them. So, in The Willingness to Sell Data by Volker Bendorf and Hans Theo Norman, the authors found that roughly 5/6 of people are willing to sell their data, with compensation rates depending on the type of data, but between €2.50 to around €20, again, depending on the type of data, though this comes with certain conditions. Should contact information be attached to any of this data, or the contact data itself, the willingness of the users dropped. The data types available to users are their preferences ranging from political views to shopping habits, to anonymous. Contact data such as the user's name, email, and phone numbers. Combination data, which contains both of the preferences and contact data, and thus not anonymous. Facebook data such as the timeline and about pages, which are also not anonymous. We know at least from this study that users will try to keep anonymity if possible, and will only reconsider if the compensation is justifiable. And for Facebook data, that was around €19. I don't know about you, but considering all I've done on my Facebook timeline is shitpost and be cringe, I'd probably take that money. But we aren't going to just rely on one source, right? Your professor would be disappointed, and so would I. Thus, I present the paper Pricing Privacy by Gian Claudio Malieri and Bart Clusters. They quantify the actual price of this data, and to quote directly from the paper, general information about a person, such as age, gender, and location, is worth a mere 0.05 cent. On the other hand, some industries will pay significantly more for customers since they spend more per transaction, specifically auto industries, financial services, and travel agencies, though this was still 0.21 cents for auto buyers. Not even a drop in the bucket considering what a modern car is worth. Obviously, this is all Obama's fault. The only data which was somewhat valuable was the health data, 26 cents per person, and of those going through significant life events, for which pregnant women can fetch up to 11 cents for their data. So, round up all the pregnant women near you, and you could buy a single pack of Cola Haribos and possibly be investigated by your local police officer. Or Interpol. Most likely Interpol. So, whilst we have quickly butchered the papers by taking out some cherry-picked examples, but this is more so the general disparity between the market rates for data and the user's expectation to collect some type of compensation, even if it's just under €20. So I've read these two papers, and other than going through a bunch of math, learning about incentives, and as I understood it, it is technically illegal for Facebook and other social media sites to force you to pay or effectively allow them to harvest your data. The payment cannot be made in the form of data, but this is Facebook we're talking about, and they've never broken any laws or engaged in any concerning corporate behavior. I'll take $2 million to permanently shut the fuck up, Zuck. Tangent aside, more sources I will list in the description, but I won't keep describing in fear I will light up the plagiarism software haunting my university submissions. On the whole, most users will sell their data under conditions of anonymity or pseudonymity. They will sell their data for varying amounts of money, mostly depending on the market rates, and sometimes on what I feel like is the person themselves throwing a number which they think makes sense. The market rate for this data is anywhere from a fraction of a cent to a possible 26 cents according to the Pricing Privacy paper. So, what are the consequences of this data sale and the data harvesting that comes with it, at least from the company side? One great example that we could look at that exploded in the past 7 or 6 years now, I'm getting old, is Cambridge Analytica. To begin with, it's one of the most famous consequences of data harvesting and its real-world effects, under the guise of an academic project. the Cambridge Analytica scandal created levels of distrust between corporations harboring massive datasets, like Facebook. Now, although the scandal did not involve the company of Facebook directly, the fact that the researchers were able to use the information given to them by Facebook users and the data of their Facebook friends who were unaware that this data was being harvested from them, and create strategies to influence their actions and thoughts, particularly related to the USA presidential election 2016. One scary outcome, or one of many scary outcomes rather, is privacy fatigue. To quote a paper about privacy fatigue, The Role of Privacy Fatigue in Online Privacy Behavior by Choi, Park, and Young. Over time, it has become burdensome for users to maintain their privacy, to the extent that it has become easy in the digital age for personal data to be collected and shared. It is also difficult to control how one's personal information is being used and thus to maintain privacy. So nowadays, people are being overwhelmed by the sheer depth of options available to them. The fact they have to juggle individual sites, the cookie requests of every site, to read the lengthy privacy policies, frequent data breaches that happen to multiple companies, and all the other matters which require significant attention for anyone who wants to know where the data is going and what is being done with this data, it's sometimes a losing battle. Another paradox that has resulted from this onslaught of data is the privacy paradox. And this one is a kind of self-fulfilling one, I believe, because it is a phenomenon where people say they value their privacy, yet they participate in certain behavior that forces them to give up this privacy, this private information, to participate in various online endeavors which provide little to no value in relation to this intrusion of their privacy, whilst they also tend to not use adequate measures to protect this privacy. And nowadays, information no longer exists in a vacuum. It now spills into all the crevices of the internet. And this information also includes stuff you'd prefer not to get stuck in the metaphorical crevice. And with an ever-growing list of companies with user bases numbering the millions, being the target of a data breach usually through some form or another of social engineering, but increasingly nowadays through malicious actors with thought of retiring his family or two for the next 2 generations. These factors all coincide to prevent users from giving a shit on the majority about their data and how it is used, since even large global corporations fail to ensure this data is stored properly and secured. So, people want to sell their data, and some people have sold their data. Yet an even larger majority does not understand the scale of their data being bought and sold hundreds of times, with data aggregators holding lists of names, addresses, and other personal information which can be used for nefarious purposes. I'm not attempting to get you to ring the alarm bells and alert your nearest politician to criminalize the sale of data. Ethically, the selling of data will most likely impact those who are already at risk or directly living in poverty, particularly in countries where 21 cents can be a tangible amount of money, equating to a meal or pocket change. Whilst to your everyday person in affluent countries, this is a paltry sum that isn't worth getting a million more spam emails or random cold calls. More sensitive information would also be worth more, with health data, as mentioned before, being also quite lucrative in relation to all the other types of data, to be fair. But one has to also worry about where this data is going, and would feel much more at ease with legislation allowing the sale of data under pseudonymization and or anonymization. But I'll finally leave you with the question: at the realistic price of what advertisers would pay for your data, specifically yours, the viewer, would you take this glorious road to financial freedom? Let me know. And if you just stay a second, I'd like to spill my guts about this video. This one took a while to write, and it's been kind of chilling on the back burner for a month or two, and I've been kind of unhappy with the script, so I went through and reviewed it a bit, and I thought, finally, if I'm not going to get this done, I'll kind of just be looking at it forever. So let me know and give me some feedback if you can, and I'll catch you guys another time. Peace out.